ISIS militants sparking chaos in the Philippines. Military checkpoints have been set up as part of the nation is now under martial law. Government forces failing to capture a terror suspect in the city of Marawi. The Muslim extremists have blockaded the streets, seizing several buildings and burning down others, including a Catholic church. We understand they do have hostages. Fox News will bring you much more information as soon as we get it.
I don't think I've ever seen a situation where nobody can locate the crime. Now, there may be. We could get an avalanche of evidence of collusion, but so far, there is none. The president insists there is no there, but he acts as if the there is everywhere.
Word from Charles Krauthammer in the Russian matter. This is why we learned today that former FBI Director James Comey will speak with special counsel Robert Mueller before giving any public testimony, if that public testimony ever happens. Marie Hart, former State Department deputy spokesperson and a Fox News contributor, and Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. And good morning to both of you. Brad, start. You're an attorney first in life. Is the there at this point?
I don't think so. Look, the FBI has been looking at this for 10 months. It's based on evidence that I believe has already been gathered as far as electronic eavesdropping by international intelligence agencies, which is the CIA. They don't do domestic spying. So Mueller should not have any problem, in my opinion, reviewing the 10 months worth of work and coming up with a conclusion immediately, clearing the president. In my opinion, that's first and foremost his job, is to take this cloud away so that the president can get on with doing the business of the people.
Yeah, interesting. Krauthammer's point is that nobody can locate the crime.
Sure.
Marie, can you?
Well, Krauthammer's other point was that everything President Trump has done makes him look guilty, even if at the end of the day no crime is found, no collusion is found. Bill, can you imagine if President Trump had not fired Jim Comey? We would be sitting here today probably talking about something else. We would not have a special counsel. So much of what President Trump has done has furthered a story that at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. There may not be any collusion that's found here, but now Mueller's looking at everything, including possible obstruction of justice.
Yeah, and that could go on for years. Richard Burr, well-respected Republican from North Carolina, on the Senate Intelligence Committee, had this to say about all that.
At the end of that option is a contempt charge, and I've said that everything is on the table. That's not our preference today. We would like to hear from General Flynn. We'd like to see his documents. We'd like him to tell his story because he publicly said, I've got a story to tell.
So you have two matters here, Brad, now, just to keep it clear. You have General Flynn, who has said he'll take the fifth, right? And you've got James Comey, who may testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee, perhaps after the memorial break. Why would Robert Mueller allow James Comey to publicly testify if he's doing all this other stuff under his own purview? Do you think when they sit down, Mueller says, sir, at this time, why don't we just stay quiet?
Well, it's not in Mueller's interest to have Comey testify or even have Flynn testify, because in order for him to do his job, he needs to be able to have control of the witnesses and the evidence. He also has to make sure that immunity is not given, which could help his investigation. So he needs to jealously guard his witnesses and the evidence. And look, he can't prevent them from testifying, but he can sure put pressure on them to not cooperate with the congressional investigation, which could do more damage and more jeopardy to them in the investigation he's conducting.
Yeah, but you know, Brad and Marie, I mean, Democrats are salivating for this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I don't know if they'll get Flynn at that table. Maybe they'll get him there physically, but perhaps he doesn't answer questions. Do you think James Comey, Marie, testifies publicly?
If I had to bet, I would probably say he will, but I do think Brad is right that Mueller really needs to guard this investigation. We have a special counsel with very broad mandate here, and that right now is the most important thing. But, you know, I think that Mike Flynn is the person here who should be most concerned about his legal future. You know, every story that comes out, the most recent one that he lied to Pentagon investigators about his Russia speech, he is the one that has repeatedly been at the center of a lot of this. And I know his attorneys right now are probably thinking very hard about how to play this. Taking the fifth this week was an interesting choice, I think.
Okay, well, we know Robert Mueller apparently has seen the Comey memos, or been briefed on them, and he's been to FBI headquarters, a place he knows well. That's where he used to work. Brad, thank you for your time. Marie, thanks to you as well. Got a lot of breaking news today. We'll bring you back soon. Shannon.
The Russia investigation continues to unfold with the former CIA director on Capitol Hill yesterday. Congressman Trey Gowdy trying to find out what John Brennan knows. They had a lot of back and forth. We'll have more of that and get the congressman's takeaway coming up.
Also from overseas, we're awaiting a news conference from British police today, the Manchester terror attack, and what we are learning today. More suspects have been arrested. What are they learning from them, and where does this trail lead? Former Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill here to break that all down as intel stories come to us here at the Fox News Channel, and the stories from survivors continue to pour in as well.
I've not slept or ate or anything because I just can't stop thinking about it, and then as soon as I stop thinking about it, it just goes back into my mind again and just hear the screams and see the people running.
We are awaiting a news conference from police in Manchester, England, as British intelligence gathering pieces of evidence in the aftermath of that deadly, devastating bombing. Yesterday, they arrested a suspect after raiding a house. We've learned that 3 additional arrests have been made in connection with the attack. Here's what we know about the man that police believe carried out this bombing. They think by himself. His name is Salman Abedi. He's 22 years old, born in Manchester. His parents are both Libyan immigrants. British security services have had him on their radar. That is prior to the bombing. He was thought to have returned from Libya as recently as just a week or so ago, just days before the attack. Police are now calling for the community to come together in the wake of this terrible tragedy.
We understand that feelings are very raw right now and that people are bound to be looking for answers. However, more than ever, it is vital that our diverse communities that make Greater Manchester such a strong place actually stand together and support each other.
Joining me now, former Navy SEAL and Fox News contributor Rob O'Neill. Good to see you today.
Thanks for having me, Shannon. Good morning.
Okay, we have so much hindsight with these cases because we now know his parents were concerned. The imam at his mosque was concerned that when he preached against ISIS, he saw a, quote, face of hate from this young man.
What he said.
There are neighbors now coming out saying he was chanting in the streets, that he was flying an Islamist flag over his home. Why do we hear about these things afterwards and not before?
People are so worried about getting labeled anything. People who are not Muslims are worried about being labeled an Islamophobe, and people that are Muslims are worried about their safety because they're in the community. There's so many signs here, but the parents of Libyan, who are Libyan, moved back to Libya. They took the passport away from this guy because they knew he was a threat. He lied to them.
To his own parents.
To his own parents, said he wanted to go to Mecca. He wanted to do the pilgrimage there, so he got his passport back, possibly went to Syria, and then went back to London to carry out this attack. With the imam, the peaceful Muslims, what they do after the prayers and every time they see each other, there's a greeting. They always give a positive greeting, say peace be upon you, things like that. This imam gave a speech against ISIS, and this terrorist was there, and he wouldn't greet him as they passed each other, and he was mad because he gave an anti-ISIS speech. And then with the neighbors seeing him calling out the first prayer in the streets, you know, there is one God, Muhammad is his prophet, yelling in the streets, hanging the flags. I mean, you see a lot of people hang flags from their countries because they're
maybe a
proud
sports
of their,
thing or
something. But this guy was doing stuff that was so crazy, but nobody wanted to say anything out of fear or out of being labeled, and that's an issue. And even to hear the argument, I know that the British intelligence services, they're all over this. They have footage of it, but they're reacting to something that happened. It's not going to be the bomb maker that blows himself up. That's a skill that they have. They're not going to blow it up. They're going to give it to one of the mules who can carry it out, someone that wants to be a martyr that thinks he's going to go to paradise. But to say that a lone wolf doesn't exist. There's so much going on in Manchester. Manchester's got radicals third only behind London and Birmingham to the most radicals. And they come out of a lot of these Islamic centers. We need to get in there and get after them.
What can we learn from bomb itself? Because I understand that a lot of times they will have signatures, things that will help you trace.
Sure.
Some kind of clues as to who's behind it, because as you said, they're going to get a young kid, somebody who's radicalized, and get them to carry out the mission.
Yeah, once they convince him that he's going to go to paradise, once he pushes the button, which is what he did. He didn't care about the kids that he blew in half, the people that he made go away. He wanted paradise. You can tell by the bombs that they made because of the projectiles. They had the nuts, the bolts, and the nails that they'll put on the outside of the bomb of a belt, which I'm assuming, I haven't seen any footage or anything. I'm assuming it's a suicide vest that blows everything out and just complete chaos. That is a tactic that has been learned from militants. So this is not something a kid got online and figured out how to mix this with this and make an explosion. This is a projectile, like an anti-personnel mine that he would wear himself. Someone that's been in combat came up with this, taught him how to do it, or did it for him. He got it in there somehow. And the bad thing is, unless we get it's not the weapon, it's not the gun, it's not the truck, it's not the bomb, it's the ideology. Unless we get into these mosques and talk to the clerics, the scholars, the ones who are radicalizing, it's going to be a long fight. We're not going to be able to kill our way to a victory here.
Well, and this talk about whether he had been in and out of Syria to Libya to some dangerous areas there. There are some reports, and we're waiting for more confirmation, that he was on the radar of some intelligence or law enforcement officials. If he was doing these travels, if he was on someone's radar, we know they're trying to track thousands of cases. So how do they pinpoint the one person or persons who are actually going to act on this stuff? Is it possible?
It's possible if you get inside the community. These are tight-knit communities, and again, not everyone's bad, but a lot of people are involved, and people that, again, they're afraid to say anything. But a lot of these times, these are ordered from Syria and planned in Belgium and then carried out in London. And these are all related. This guy, this mosque, it's all related. Manchester is related to remember the man in the hat in the Brussels attacks. And they're all planning to do whatever they can. And they're a lot better at forward thinking than we are. So as opposed to the long line, we have long lines at TSA where we take our shoes off because of a failed shoe bomb that happened one time that didn't even work. That's how we play. They think, well, they expend the perimeter. We'll hit them at those lines at TSA. We'll hit them outside when picking up passengers. We'll attack children when they killed two mothers waiting for their 15-year-old daughters. We need to get after the ideology, get inside of what they're thinking, and we've got to stop worrying at some point about, oh, am I going to offend somebody? I mean, I would much rather offend someone than have a 9-year-old girl running around yelling, "Where's my sister?" It's a terrible thing. It's there. It's real. And just because we don't think we're at war, they are at war.
Yeah, we may see this very differently. Rob O'Neill, thank you for your service. Thanks for being here today as well.
Thanks for having me.
On that note, too, this morning we're learning some of the names of those who were killed inside that Manchester arena. Many of them teenagers and children, their stories as we get them in a moment here. Also, we are waiting the start of a hearing in the House. Lawmakers will hear from White House Director Mick Mulvaney making the case for President Trump's $4 trillion budget plan, and he has a strong defense ready. We'll share that some of that with you in a moment, as the Trump team releases stunning new numbers on the real cost of Obamacare. Utah Senator Mike Lee is our guest next on That Live. Stay tuned.
Everyone is interested in seeing the truly needy in their state and in our nation get the care that we promised them in Medicaid. But there's a better way to do it than under current law, which is Obamacare, and also talk about what a failure that is.
Back to Manchester, England, a moment here awaiting this press conference on behalf of police, and many times this is where we get the latest news and information. We can tell you already today, before the sun up came today in the U.S., 3 more arrests have been made on Wednesday. The threat level, you might be aware, has been raised to critical among concerns that the killer on Monday night may not have acted alone, and there's a lot of evidence suggesting he did not act alone. So we're watching that. While that's happening, we're waiting the president to arrive in Brussels, Belgium, for a meeting with NATO leaders, so you're going to see that in about 15 or 20 minutes is my guess, based on flying time out of Rome. So stay with us. We'll bring you that press conference in a moment here.
And we are also awaiting the start of a big hearing on Capitol Hill. White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney set to defend President Trump's $4 trillion budget proposal unveiled yesterday. But lawmakers from both parties say they're concerned. Democrats say drastic cuts make the plan a non-starter, while some Republicans say there isn't enough money for the military. But Mulvaney says the budget is simply good news for taxpayers.
We are not kicking anybody off of any program who really needs it. That's not. We have plenty of money in this country to take care of the people who need help. Okay? And we will do that. We don't have enough money to take care of everybody who doesn't need help. So what we try and do is look at these programs, again, through the perspective of the people paying for it.
Joining me now, Vice Chairman of the Joint Economic Committee, Utah Senator Mike Lee. Good to have you with us, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, so Director Mulvaney laid out a couple things. He said, first of all, we shouldn't measure our success by how many people are on these assistance programs, but how many people we get off. He also talked about the fact that if you give a slight increase or keep a budget item steady, people in Washington count that as a cut. That's not how it works in our budgets at home when we're balancing our own checkbooks, but it sounds like such a radical idea to so many people out there.
Well, that's right. And here in Washington, people want to just keep government programs they have. They want to measure success by the growth in government, when the opposite really should be true. What we want is not bigger government. What we want are stronger citizens. And when we look at always increasing the size and the scope of government, we diminish the power of individual Americans. We weaken our institutions that have made our economy strong and our country great.
I want to ask you about the CBO score we expect to get today on the House measure passed on repealing and replacing Obamacare. There is some talk that if it's radically different than what the House had projected, they're going to have to vote again on health care. Meanwhile, you all are working on your own system and proposal over in the Senate. How's it going? We hear this working group meets twice a week. Any GOP senator can come. What goes on in those meetings? What can you tell us?
We're having a lot of discussions about the bill, and we all understand that the House bill has to be essentially rewritten. There's not going to be a whole lot about the Senate bill that looks identical to the House bill. What we do know is that it has to save at least as much money as the House bill does, these under our budget rules. But what we also know is that we're moving in a direction that will make health care more affordable for the American people. What we want to do is get the federal government out of the health care regulation business as much as we possibly can so that we can bring down the cost of health care and make it more affordable for Americans who right now in many parts of the country are finding it their single biggest expense.
Well, and there's a new report out coming through HHS, a senior official there saying the cost of individual Obamacare policies are up an average of 105% between 2013 and 2017 in 39 states using the federal exchange. Alabama is the worst example, up 223%. From $178 to now almost $400. So those numbers help make your argument. But what about a measure, a proposal, a bill? Can you put forth that will actually change the reality of that for people who are writing those checks?
Well, we can learn a lot, Shannon, from the government regulation that's kicked in. Since the Affordable Care Act took full effect just about 4 years ago, what we've seen is an astronomical spike in the cost of health care. I think it stands to reason that when government gets involved and the price goes way up, perhaps we should roll back on the federal government's involvement and watch prices go down. You see, because excessive federal government intervention squelches competition. But when competition is allowed to thrive, then two things happen. Prices go down and quality goes up. That's what the American people expect and deserve, and that's what we hope to deliver.
Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said he could do with less drama from the White House, a little less drama down the road there on Pennsylvania Avenue. How much is the constant drip of talk about COMEY, talk about Russia, talk about releasing information to the Russians? How much does that impact your ability to focus people and get things done there on the Hill, or does it?
I don't think it does. I mean, look, we're working on this process. I hope to continue working on this process until we're finished. We want to make sure we get it right. And we want to make sure we get it done. Sure, there are other things going on, but it's Washington. There are always other things going on. We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Is the president, though, a partner for you in this and things like getting the Senate bill drafted? You know, we know what happened with the House. There was a lot of last-minute arm twisting and deal making to get this thing done. Are you operating just solely as a legislative body at this point with no influence from the president? Would it be helpful for him to get involved, or do you prefer to do it on your own?
At this point, it's operating within the Senate. I'm sure there will be more involvement from the White House down the road, but at this point, we've got Republican senators working day in, day out to make sure we get this done and get it done right.
Okay, The Hill in a piece today says Republicans are struggling to rack up legislative victories during President Trump's first 100 days in office, despite having their first unified government in a decade. And talk about the pressure that you all now feel. Do you feel the pressure?
Oh, sure. And it's appropriate. The pressure has been put on us by Washington itself. The pressure is pressure that we ourselves have caused as a Congress. In other words, when we've overextended the federal government's reach and we've caused a lot of people throughout the country to suffer as a result, that makes it incumbent upon us to undo the damage that we've done. We've got to undo a lot of the harm that we've been inflicting on the American people by extending the federal government's reach far beyond its intended limits.
Well, I know you've written some excellent books on just that topic. They're worth a read for folks out there who'd like to know a little bit more about how it's supposed to work. Senator Mike Lee, good to see you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.
Again, waiting on a police debrief in Manchester, England. We'll bring that to you in a moment. Here also, the president en route to Brussels, Belgium, expected to land in a matter of minutes here. Congressman Trey Gowdy, meanwhile, back at home, pressing for hard evidence on possible collusion between Trump campaign aides and Russia, as the former CIA director testifies before a House committee on that very topic.
did you have evidence of a connection between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors?
As I said, Mr. Gowdy, I don't do evidence.
I appreciate that you don't do evidence, Director Brennan. Unfortunately, that's what I do.
Now, the day after, and the congressman is our guest live in a moment. Trey Gowdy, stand by there in the Hill.
Plus, a tanker truck explodes on a California highway, what police say may have played a role in that.
It's a really simple question. Did evidence exist of collusion, coordination, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors at the time you learned of 2016 efforts?
I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know.
Wow. So that exchange between Congressman Trey Gowdy, chair of that committee, and former CIA Director John Brennan from yesterday. Brennan testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Trey Gowdy is with me now live to talk about what he has learned. And sir, good day to you. Good morning, and thank you for your time. So tell us, where are you now based on what you heard yesterday? Let's start there with the public hearing.
Well, we are one witness into what will probably be a several dozen witness investigation. Director Brennan is really important. He was the head of the CIA. Of course, you know we've already talked to Director COMEY, Admiral Rogers. We've already talked to current Director Mike Pompeo. He's a really important witness, and we've had both a public and a private setting. It was helpful, I think, for your viewers. Some of that information members of the committee already knew. But this is a really important issue when a foreign country seeks to interfere with our democratic process, and I appreciate Director Brennan coming.
All right. So what he talked about was the contacts between Russian officials and some of those connected to the Trump team. What you were asking specifically was about collusion for the election and points after. So did you get greater clarification on number one or number two, the collusion or the contact?
Well, we already knew that this won't surprise anybody. Foreign actors seek to contact members of campaigns during the pendency of campaigns. That should not surprise anyone. The collusion is a specific word, Bill, but it's also the specific word that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to use. 3 California Democrats have all used the words evidence and collusion. None of those 3 have any idea. They're not fact witnesses. So I wanted to ask the fact witness, is there evidence of collusion? There are other important issues. Contacts is important. Coordination's important. All of that. But the word collusion, conspiracy, coordination, to me is one of the seminal questions in this investigation, and that's why I ask it.
Okay, so specifically, do you have evidence of collusion today?
I do not, but I'm not a fact witness. That's why we have to talk to the 36 witnesses that we're going to bring in.
Okay. Does John Brennan have evidence of collusion today?
If he had it, he didn't give it to us yesterday. And what he did in his defense is he took what he had and he gave it to the FBI, which is the proper place for it to go if it is a criminal or quasi-criminal investigation.
Okay, but you had a private meeting after the public hearing, correct?
We did, yes, sir.
I know you're not going to give up much on that, but characterize that meeting for our viewers.
More granularity, more particularity. I think Director Brennan said in his public session how devastating leaks are. We went into that and how to stop them. And I think we alluded to the fact that the Russians are not the friend of any American. So they're going to collect information on Secretary Clinton, President Trump. They may release all of it. They may release some of it. I'm interested in what they did not release because it helps me understand their motive.
Okay, so a specific question here. Did you learn something in the private hearing that leads you in a new direction today?
I didn't, Bill, because I've been headed in the same direction for the last 3 months, which is I want to talk to every single witness that has access to firsthand information. I want to understand Russian efforts, our response. If there was collusion, and keep in mind this tripartite question that I've asked before, direct with President Trump, direct with his campaign, or direct with people who are kind of wannabe hanger-on campaign the campaign folks who aren't official. So those are 3 different tranches, and I want to know the answer to all 3 of those tranches.
Is the third tranche, is that like the Carter Page connection? Or?
I'm sure you, as famous as you are, you have people in your life that claim to know you, but they really don't. I suspect presidential candidates have people that represent access to them that really do not have that.
Okay, now you were asking questions about the unmasking. What were you going for there?
We're not going to reauthorize these surveillance programs if the American people are not satisfied that their security is going to be safeguarded. So leaks are one issue. The unmasking within the intelligence community, that is a privilege to be able to request that a U.S. person's name be unmasked. And I want to know who's making the request, what is the evidentiary basis of that request, and if it's late in your tenure, like the day before you leave office, that should send off alarms and sirens in your head as to why that person did it.
Okay, two more specific questions on that. Do you have evidence that the Obama administration abused the unmasking and the procedures under the law?
I don't have a good definition for the word abused. I need to know what the policies and procedures are, and I need to know the full universe of unmasking requests. Were any denied? Were some granted with very scant evidentiary basis? I don't want to accuse any administration of doing something until I have access to the facts, but it is certainly legitimate lane of inquiry.
So you're saying it's a possibility?
It is a possibility among lots of other possibilities, including that they follow the policies and follow the procedures. I want to know if there are certain trends. Were there more requests at the end? Were certain people making
the administration requests? Okay, got it.
Yes, sir.
Last question then, and then I've got to run, and I thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe this is how the Obama team could have spied on the Trump team? Is that a possibility or not?
I don't want to use the word spy because the unmasking, while very important, unmaskings that don't result in leaks is one category of internal deliberation. The unmaskings that result in leaks of classified information, that's a crime. So I want to be fair to the president. I'm not going to accuse him or anyone of spying until I have all the unmaskings, until we have an end to the leak investigation.
There's a lot to go through. I hope you come back, okay? Trey Gowdy, thank you for your time. I'm out of time, as I said here.
Yes,
thank you, sir, on the Hill. Shannon.
We are waiting the president's arrival in Brussels, fresh off his meeting with Pope Francis. Up next to Belgium, we will bring you his arrival live as it happens. Plus,
Killer said the following: "We don't believe the killing of innocents. This is not us." He also said his son was in Libya a month and a half ago and was preparing to visit Saudi Arabia. So as we try and figure out, as we piece together where he has been over the past, say, several months, we now start to consider a trip in Libya, where we know terror training camps are up and running. In fact, some of them have already been bombed by the U.S. military to date. There's a report out of France suggesting he had also traveled to Syria, although that is not confirmed, and Sebastian Gorka, when we spoke with him at the White House 50 minutes ago, would not confirm that either. But this is how we're trying to piece together his life and where he has been as we try and get more clues and possibly more arrests today.
and we will keep an eye on that presser coming up, where hopefully we'll learn even more. Meanwhile, we're also awaiting President Trump's arrival in Brussels. He'll be greeted by the Belgian Prime Minister. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is there live as well. All right, Kevin, what is the president's agenda for this? Would it be fair to say that his visit is being met with anticipation, anxiety? How are they feeling about it?
Well, I think it's, frankly, I think it depends on who you talk to, right? I mean, on the one hand, certainly there's a great deal of anticipation here as the president makes his way here to Brussels for the first time as commander-in-chief. But I do think there's also some anxiety, in particular, among some circles as it relates to economic stability within the EU, this being the home of the European Union. But I think security cooperation, Shannon, clearly will be the major headline here as it relates in particular to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and what will be the U.S. role in NATO moving forward. The president says he no longer considers NATO obsolete, but he does admit that he feels like in order for the organization to be successful, member nations have to do their fair share and pay their fair share, and that would be 2% of GDP, Shannon.
All right, Kevin Corke live there as we await the president's arrival there in Brussels as well. Thank you, Kevin.
We should see